So a definite overlap in concepts that we dabble in is like one that has fascinated me since the very beginning of this awakening, that I feel is something that I have been unconsciously fascinated prior to understanding it. And that's this whole thing with the shadow. Like prior to the awakening, I would not be able to describe what I do in this way. But after the awakening and understanding this concept, here's how I would describe this triggering type of art that I make. And it, to me, I feel that I am a pretty civilized, kind, maybe even weak version of myself in like real social life. But I take all of that shadow energy and I transmute it into my art. And that's like, I'm so fascinated with it. I'm so fascinated with the darker and evil aspects of people, the repressed things that society wants to repress. And I'm so fascinated with just like doing an extreme expression of it. And put, because to me, I think putting it in art, transmuting it into art is what makes it acceptable. And I think what triggers me is when people say, no, it's not even acceptable there. And I'm like, fuck you. This is the only place it's acceptable. So from your perspective of watching me, is that kind of like while you were going through this shift and playing with this concept, it sounds to me like that absorbing and taking on that concept is what led you to be open to understanding. Is that how you saw what I was doing? Yeah,
absolutely. And also just appreciating it for not only myself, but for other people, because there's so few that are willing to go there and do it in that way. And I've always found comedy to be incredibly healing. It's like one of those like huge equalizer. Like you could really touch on topics that no one would talk about if it was outside of a comedy scene, you know? So people don't have the opportunities to address something that is triggering to them. Or, you know, you get someone in a show and they laugh at something that should not be funny in a regular discussion. They're like, why did I laugh at that? And, you know, it starts that process or plants that seed for someone to start exploring, like, why are we not talking about it? How do I actually feel about it? Why do we all just assume that everyone feels the same way or that we should feel the same way? So, I mean, I appreciate it not only for myself, but for other people. I think everyone has their way of kind of bringing their healing to, you know, the collective. And, you know, I just appreciate the way that you bring it, you know, even though a lot of people might not be able to see it, but I think that they will. It just depends on where they are, like in their own journey, I guess.
Yeah. Have you watched that film that originally triggered you since?
No, I have not.
We should go back and watch that Chris Pike story.
It's truly one of my favorites. Like I think it's one of my best works in terms of being as offensive as possible, but while also doing it in a way with, I think, the proper amount of finesse. That's my take, because when I first made it, like, I think what you're describing, what the screening you saw was not the initial screening. I think you saw it when I screened it at the comedy festival.
Was it the comedy festival?
Because I've only screened it twice at Dead Crow. One was the premiere at like the end of 2016.
Was that an open mic of some sort? So I don't think it was the.
I think it was after like a Tuesday show or something. That
was the one.
Maybe. Well, to my surprise, I don't remember anyone walking, and I thought there were definitely going to be people. There
were people in the audience. I think this was super triggering. There were people in the audience that we were like, oh, like they're struggling with, or not struggling with, or they have autism, and people were like walking them out. So I think my friends were having like a super, you know, like they seemed fine, but there were, you know, people walking them out like, oh, you might not want to sit here for this.
Right.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's possible that was the first screening, but I don't know. I think I remember going into that first screening having like knowing what the film is. Yeah. And assuming I was going to have mass walkouts and people were going to be very upset with me. But from that first screening, I was so surprised by. You guys walked out and left, right? Like you didn't even finish it, right?
I don't think we actually did. I think we were in such shock. We were kind of watching what was happening around us.
That you stayed to the end.
I think we stayed until the end. But also, I think one of my friends wanted to express her anger with the manager or something like that. Yeah. So I think that's why we might have stayed to the end. I just remember not understanding until about halfway through how... Because I had only experienced your lighter side of comedy. Right. And I enjoyed you at that point. And everyone's like, oh, this guy's such a genius. Here's his film. And I was like, oh, yeah, you know.
Oh
And then
my
halfway
God.
through, I realized what was happening, and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, well, again, that my reaction to this is assuming that there was going to be
and a lot of
mass-
people didn't. A lot of people actually didn't walk out. You're correct. There was a
Yeah.
few that were walked out before it even really got started, and I think that was also like concerning to the group. Like, why is no one walking out on this?
Yeah.
Like, we have to say something. You know?
Well, because the film kind of has this arc where like it starts and it's like it slowly introduces like what's going on. Oh, his son has autism.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a little bit of verbal abuse on this concept going on. Okay, it's like really verbally abusive. And then that scene in the park with John Ripley and
Yeah.
me, it gets so verbally abusive. And I
Mhm.
remember the audience shutting off during that. But when it goes so far to where John punches him onto the floor and calls him a faggot, like that, then they started laughing again. And that's what shocked me. I was like, oh my God, it's so bad. It's won them back. and that shocked me. And all the way to the end where he successfully kills his son and then makes his joke where like John's like, how do you feel? And he just looks over at his son's body and you can hear like a fly buzzing around it. And then he just turns back and goes, it feels really good. The audience burst into laughter. I was like, no way I got them to laugh at that. No fucking way. So in my mind, my experience with this is very surprised about how well that first screening went.
It like brings me back.
Yeah.
I'm like, my body's physically like uncomfortable, even though like my mind's accepted it now. Like I'm having the physical.
Why does that please me so
experience.
much, knowing that she gets uncomfortable hearing about just hearing the story? I'm just like,
My mind's
this
not
is funny.
uncomfortable around it anymore, but I'm brought back to that moment where my body is like, I just want to throw up because I was just like, oh my gosh.
It's your pain body.
Trying to understand everyone's uncomfortable. You know, you want to protect people, and then you just like, whatever, what are you going to do?
Right. Well, and my thinking too, because I've tried to explain too, like why those kinds of jokes are funny to me. And it is a sense of humor that I definitely know I have like good friends with that disconnect on it. Like Johnny Gray, you know, him and I are really good friends. And it's one of these senses of humor that don't overlap with us. Like I think the reason why it's so funny to me is because that's the last person you should be harsh to like that. And to do it so heavily, it just breaks this point where if you're like kind of like within reason harsh, it seems too real. Like, oh, you actually like,
yeah, but going over the top
Right.
makes it okay.
yeah,
'Cause
going
it's
over the top,
clearly-
it's like slapstick. It's like, why would you say something so horrible about the last person who deserves it? You know, it's like there's no fucking point, dude. You're just being a fucking dick for no reason. And there's something funny about that to me. And I think that's the disconnect is there's some people that don't find being so mean it's slapstick humor. They don't find it funny there. And I don't know what that is. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's touching on some people's probably deepest fears of what others' beliefs might be, even though they might not ever say it about the way that they feel about anybody. You know, you're touching on that, like no one would ever talk about it because it's their deepest fear of what someone might actually believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the other thing too is I used to have these meetings with one of my old like creative writing professors who's also a psychologist, and I did an independent study with him for one semester. I just was really fascinated. I took his creative process class, and I was like, I want to keep like talking to you and learn. Can I do an independent study with you? And then we did. And then even after that, he was like, do you want to just keep meeting up for like a beer at the Husk, you know, once a week or something? I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. And so we do that. And I remember describing this film to him, and he's always like kind of like testing me, like, do you think that's a really good idea? He's like, I don't really see. I don't know if you have something here.
What's the value, Cameron? What's the value?
It was like, well, where's the truth in this? Because I kept focusing on the humor. And I was like, well, the unfortunate truth to this is this Chris Spike character that I'm playing, it's not a total fiction. Like there's definitely people that have a mentally challenged or autistic son to whatever degree or child that have these horrible, hateful emotions about them that they like, it would be so taboo to talk about or express. And like, of course, this is like a exaggerated, hyperbolic slapstick version of it, but it is a truth. And when I described that, he was like, oh, okay, yeah, that is true. So there is that unfortunate like real element to something as horrible as that. But yeah, I mean,
exploring the thoughts of a parent like being upset with their child, just being frustrated and exploring all the dark thoughts, you know,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
having fun with it. That's a good idea, but
Yeah.
nobody wants to laugh at that because they don't want people to see them laughing at those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like the core issue is this egocentrism of like Chris Pike lacks any empathy for his son in his situation.
Mhm.
And it's all about like, woe is me. Isn't my life difficult because I have this son? And to me, that is what I think is the essence of like this relatable anti-hero narcissistic character.
Right.
That's what, if you want to get real deep and specific about like what's going on at the core.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, went off on that.
No, yeah.
Again, it's one of my personal favorite films of mine.
I'm sure it's satisfying knowing that somebody saw that and like had such a response to it, and when they're with their group of friends, because I imagine it was like you and your group of girlfriends that night. Yeah, and they were just
Little did I know that there were some folks in the audience that were not impressed.
Yeah. You thought you'd killed it. Everybody laughed. You thought you'd like that's the good thing to like when you push the crowd so far to the edge and then you bring them back. I'm sure doing that with a film and
I might have laughed at some point just because I was so uncomfortable. It's like, what else do you do? You know?
Getting so uncomfortable you laugh. Oh yeah, that's for real.
I was like, there's no way that they just did that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely how I feel about like that scene where it gets so verbally abusive and then becomes physical. Like that's what my take on the reaction was. It was like everyone was just like, no way.
Yeah.
No fucking way.
Yeah.
This is why would you make this? It's like a meta experience.
That was a thought process. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also just confusion after that. I was so confused by you as a character, just like in life after that. Because I did come back to the comedy club, and every time I would see you, I was like, "What is it? What is going to happen? You roll the dice. You just never know what you're going to get."
Yeah.
Yep.